You don't necessarily have to know all that scientific stuff to make a great product, but when you do know a little more in depth about what's going on with the process, it just gives you more angles. And when we look at customization, that's just, kind of more tools in our toolbox. My name's Dr. Patrick Heist, and I'm co-founder and co-owner of Firm Solutions Incorporated and Wilderness Trail Distillery. Bourbon in Kentucky and in the United States is pretty serious business. When we look at customizing mash bills, we don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel because we've already got great products, we being the industry collectively and historically and traditionally. So when we look at customizing mash bills, we're looking at making a very consistent product. I can't remember what distiller said it. It might have been Parker Beam or somebody like that. I always give him credit for it. But the statement is consistency is the mark of a pro.
Customization and consistency doesn't necessarily mean you can't be creative.
Oh, absolutely.
You're consistent within your creativity. So we're seeing a lot of consumers and a lot of our business partners looking for customized mash bills and other things like that. But I think first and foremost, like you said, whatever you decide to do, be consistent in it and do lots of things within those confines.
Yeah,
I think it's important to honor the history of bourbon. And as long as you're honoring the history of bourbon, we have a responsibility to preserve that. Then that gives us a little bit of license to be creative and to step out. I'm not comfortable with how far some people have stepped out, but I think all of us here have pretty traditional roots in distillation and in bourbon making or whiskey making. But first and foremost, we have to honor the art and preserve that art.
I come from the Kentucky bourbon world, and so I really learned very traditionally, even how I mill the grain, all of that. But I'm so excited to see people that just throw caution to the wind and say, yeah, bourbon's steeped in tradition, that's great, I respect it, but I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna do a little bit different.
Well, if you look at the process from front to back and then, apply a customization to that, there's so many different steps that can be customized. So you got the type of grains that are used, the quality of the grains that are used, the way that the grains are processed, the way that the mash is made, the cooking temperatures. But there's also things like, are you gonna use a sweet mash or a sour mash? And everyone knows that sour mash whiskeys, that's one of the most predominant types of whiskey and bourbon made here in the United States. It's all great stuff. But when we look at consistency in terms of ingredients, in our case, we decided to go with a sweet mash relative to a sour mash. And again, we feel like water is more consistent than backset. So that would be an example of how we do things relative to how other distilleries do things.
Pat has all of these amazing tools at his facility to be able to manage a sweet mash, where I think some people, some facilities find it easier to use the sour mash to do the pH adjustment and that sort of thing. And it's because of the tradition of the industry. They have these processes that they've always done, but he's really embraced the future of what's possible. The entire industry is involved, but the science and the way we understand the science is what allows us to continue to change the game in customization, I think.